Newcastle United over recent years have been criticised in many areas, whether that's their ownership, recent trophy droughts, failure to secure transfer targets. But what they can't be critiqued for is the success rates on their big money signings. Alexander Isak, Sandro Tonali, Anthony Gordon, 6'6" German 23-year-old striker Nick Woltemade is comfortably enjoying life within that club, with 5 goals in just 7 starts in Geordie colours. The Alexander Isak saga and the struggle for summer additions was an initial cause for concern, but Big Nick up top has certainly left those concerns right behind. Now, Woltemade before this season only had one consistent season for Stuttgart at the top level, and he only made his Germany national team debut back in September against Slovakia, so caution was definitely in the field around this move to the northeast. But it has to be said, this is not your usual everyday striker. Big 6'6" number 9s are stereotypically all about direct football. They want the ball provided for them with headers across into the box. But Woltemade is again not your everyday striker. The 23-year-old at his best is seen dropping in deep towards the ball, with runners sprinting beyond him, whether that's Gordon, Elanga, Tonali or Bruno. He demands the ball to his feet. He really does. The various amounts of footage I watched in preparation for this, I noticed him offering himself to the ball every single time it was near. He demands the ball in his body language and loves the ball passed to his feet. If you watch Newcastle, you'll probably spot this. But this doesn't mean that Woltemade is found nowhere near his penalty area and drops far too deep. The data shows at Newcastle so far some really impressive stats, but as you can see, his 11 shots so far under Eddie Howe have all come inside the penalty box. Despite having less minutes than most Newcastle attackers, he shares the most touches in the penalty area, so the German still provides plenty of box threat despite his preference to drop in deep. Analysing that box threat more, and so far his conversion rate is amongst the finest in the division. The shots between both feet are fairly shared out. He's scoring headers, drawing fouls and asserting its physical frame within duels. Now, the irony surrounding Woltemade's height is that notoriously he isn't actually that good at heading the ball, despite the fact he's 6'6". Even though he's scored 2 headers so far, quite often he leans back far too much on that initial leap. Lots of headers usually result in going over the bar or just complete misdirection. For Stuttgart last season, he scored just 1 header from 16. I don't think he's terrible here. When he misses it, it looks a lot worse when you apply his height and strength into context. He needs to sharpen up on his consistency here, particularly in his direction. Hopefully he does improve. Hopefully this is the sort of thing that Eddie Howe does look towards. But back towards his dropping deep. The German striker when dropping in deep is often followed by an opposition centre-back. Woltemade always wants to take his touch backwards so he can feel that engagement with the centre-back, to know where he is, to know he's placed himself between him and the ball. Once he knows he's there, he knows he's secure. His huge size and upper body strength ensures he's either going to lay the ball off to a teammate, win a foul, or turn very swiftly and use that crafty footwork. He has excellent hold-up play all round. Usually, when he's laying it off to a teammate, simply, that could be the start of some combination play, or better yet, his teammate attacking the space the German just dragged the centre-back from. That piece of counter movement for Newcastle is key in breaking down a back line and utilising their wingers within their squad that enjoy those inside spaces. If Woltemade's touch is a little loose or sloppy, then chances are his dangly long legs will chip in to retain the ball helpfully. Often due to his big size and his lack of intensity and speed, opponents lock onto the physical tussle far too much, which is why the German does draw lots of fouls, but his quick feet can be a real work of art sometimes. A technical forward that's physically capable of bouncing off defenders whilst also escaping tight spaces and 1v1s with quick-witted footwork is just the stuff of dreams in full flow. sometimes you have to scratch your eyes at what you're seeing. Even when pressure is applied and he's being shoved, he maintains balance super well, meaning he can hold himself up in link-up play and consume more numbers into him, making him really tricky to stop. Anytime you watch the 23-year-old, you'll notice just how many numbers he draws into him, effectively and effortlessly creating space for teammates, simply by the act of dropping in deep. But other ways of creating space consist of his constant movement. He enjoys a near post run to pull centre backs away from another attacker in the box, as well as physically leaning in to a centre back, pinning him back, handling a teammate time and space to carry the ball into. He certainly is not afraid to throw himself into the physical contest between him and a defender, welcoming the ugly of the game with duels, tussles, but also encourages the fluid overall jazz he contains with the ball at his feet. Something I would like to see him eventually incorporate is actually looking to swiftly turn more when he gets the ball. Because he's transitioning to English football and its aggression, this will take time to expertise. But in Germany, Woltemade was so effective at receiving the ball, turning, then creating that irritating detachment between the defender and the ball, which would eventually lead to the opponent physically losing, Woltemade shrugging him off, and the German having more space to execute a finish on goal. He knocks them off their stride, and once he becomes more confident in competing against Premier League centre-backs, he'll be seriously deadly here. With that sheer size and frame we've seen so far, it makes it quite apparent that he doesn't need huge acceleration to progress the ball forwards when carrying. He relies on his size and strength to do the talking, to maintain the ball, to progress the ball forwards. Shuffling over to his finishing in front of goal now, and the 23-year-old is pretty convincing in his ball striking, when given the space to wrap his foot around the ball, evident in his penalty against Nottingham Forest. But when he needs to be sharper and more instinctive in the box, he's a little more chaotic, but does genuinely come close to scoring quite a lot. The woodwork and Woltemade seems to be quite the theme, but again, instinctively, like his well-taken goal against Brighton, there's flashes of a striker that can be clinical. Efforts so far for Eddie Howe has him aiming towards the left side of the goal, evidenced via his shot map so far at Newcastle. But he's definitely been unlucky at times. But the best thing about his finishing for me is that despite his big size, there's a cool and distinct demeanour when he strikes the ball. His swing of the ball, his body orientation doesn't blatantly give away what he's about to do. It's slick and silky like his all-round game. But how does that silky, swifty footwork exactly impact Newcastle from a tactical perspective? Now, Woltemade for me is just such an interesting player. I do think there are slight similarities with Kai Havertz. He likes a more supportive role to a striker, but Newcastle provide him with those runners on the inside, with those runners on the outside, so this does work. And he has slightly more typical centre forward traits than Kai Havertz, but once again, such an interesting player. I remember watching the German under-21s tournament, that game against Spain where he scored a hat-trick, and just thinking, what is this full-grown adult doing on the pitch with these kids? He doesn't look right in a youth game. Physically, he's developed to play senior football, and he was absolutely amazing. Really, really good player, and he really complements Newcastle and Eddie Howe in so many different ways. Now, commonly for Newcastle, he's the one dropping in deep, receiving the ball off a Tonali, off a Burn, off a Bruno Guimaraes. And the best thing about Newcastle's squad is that the wingers are quite prolific. If we have a look at a lot of the players that I've got highlighted around here, you've got the likes of Visser, Harvey Barnes, Gordon, Ramsey, Jolinton, even Livramento can throw himself in there as well. And then on this side, you have the likes of Murphy, Alanga, Guimaraes. One of the most common things about all of these players is they like those inside spaces, especially Alanga, although he's not got quite going for platoon yet. But Woltemade unleashes this. These are prolific forwards within their own right. Woltemade dropping in deep creates a lot of space for them, especially when you consider a lot of Premier League teams nowadays, a lot of European teams nowadays are man to man. So this is a tool to which he can drop in, pull away a centre-back and create space for that clever piece of counter movement. I think when Johan Visser is back from injury, this creates so much potential for the two to work together in potentially a 4-4-2. But he unleashes this team so much, and the best thing about Woltemade is that he suits pretty much any style of play. If you want to be a little bit more counter-attacking, then guess what? You can go direct up to Woltemade. He can be a Chris Wood-like asset, maybe not to the same pedigree, but he certainly fulfills that role. The likes of Ramsey, Jolinton, Visser, Gordon can feed off him and transition up the pitch, as Newcastle do have a lot of pace and power. He also adds to the physical ceiling of this squad, which already athletically and physically is just so high. Woltemade does suit counter-attacking football, but also possession-based football as well. If you're trying to break down a low block, break down a really tricky 5 at the back defence, then Woltemade is a tool that you can use. He can drop in deep, he can influence play on the ball, and the best thing as well about Woltemade is he isn't going to be isolated. He isn't going to be a striker that relies on his movement to find space. Woltemade will drop in, he wants the ball, he wants touches of the ball, so he's not going to be isolated, and he isn't shy of the ball. He suits that possession-based football. He really does. His skill set of dropping in deep is probably quite suitable for the likes of Chelsea, for Arsenal, but at Newcastle, I think Eddie Howe has so much to work with. But the most impressive prospect for me when Newcastle have a few players back from injury is the potential for him and Johan Visser. I mean, Johan Visser for 50 million, he's been injured for quite a while, he's got 1 year left on his contract at Brentford, was really quite suspect when you look back on it, but a 4-4-2 of Visser and Woltemade has so much potential. I mean, you can look at it as a 4-2-3-1 if you really want to for more balance nowadays, but out of possession it really could be this. Woltemade is so impressive at dropping in deep in a supportive role, and then you give Visser the opportunity to run in the channels for the two to swap around. They complement each other so well. They are really good assets. Two very expensive assets, but in terms of mid-table to upper top 4 Premier League duos, they really could shine, like your Mbeumo and Visser partnership of recently. And out of possession, there's something quite impressive too. I think Woltemade is capable of dropping into this 4-5-1. If we have a look at Newcastle typically from deep within a 4-5-1 shape, it is usually this. This is what we've seen under Eddie Howe, and this is what we've seen with Nick Woltemade. But with Nick Woltemade, I think he's capable of really dropping in deep. And the best thing about dropping him deep is that teams can't really pass through him. Teams can't really play around him. Physically, he's so developed. He has his long legs to intercept the ball, and in terms of corners, in terms of crosses, he can head them away. And when Newcastle are pinned in a little bit, maybe playing a team of the magnitude of the likes of Arsenal, in terms of Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, then you have an outlet in transition, where Alanga, Gordon, Jolinton, Tonali, Bruno, Trippier, Livramento, Lewis Hall, Ramsey can all feed off and dangerously beat teams within transition. And if you push him a little bit forward again, although Woltemade isn't the speediest, he isn't the most intense with the ball, what he certainly brings is hard work ethic. And again, he's not the fastest, but imagine being pressed by a 6'6" German the size of Woltemade. He does press and he is pretty intense with it, whether that's down to the goalkeeper, to the centre backs. So Eddie Howe can still deploy his man-to-man press and also raise the physical ceiling of the squad with the sort of swap of Isac here for Nick Woltemade. He brings so much, he solves so many solutions for this Newcastle team and unleashes so many of their prolific forwards. I think Nick Woltemade, when we look back at this summer, is probably going to be one of the signings of the summer. Despite Newcastle's struggle to secure those summer additions, they secured a really good one. Of course, this is just a good start and we're talking within its honeymoon period, but I think Newcastle fans probably aren't missing Isak too much. He's an amazing player, one of the best strikers in the world, but Nick Woltemade has that potential too. He's fantastic, and I think in hindsight, Newcastle have come out of this saga in a really good position. Thank you guys for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, feel free to smash a like and subscribe to the channel. What do you think of Nick Woltemade and Newcastle's chances of wherever they're going to finish this season? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.